Welcome this afternoon to a discussion of the hydrogen markets. And it's a very dynamic situation. There is speculation about orders of magnitude difference in those markets between now and 2050, when there is the goal to reach the net zero. In other words, where the net emissions of carbon in the world from industrial and commercial sources are zero. The market that we're focusing on here is for air, water, and energy product and services. And hydrogen has been selected as a leading candidate to fight climate change. It represents a potential market of more than 60 billion per year just for the hydrogen-ready air and water and energy products. And there are many niches with unique cost of ownership factors. A most profitable market program needs to quantify and validate the opportunity in each niche. This is possible with the industrial Internet of Wisdom causation loop. And as you see here on the right, you start with the niche that becomes part of a process. So it could be a valve, it could be cryogenic processes, the plant, the corporation, the industry. And then our role here at the McIlvaine Company would be to provide market forecasts in each one of these niches for each one of these processes, plants, corporations, industries. And so the market forecast really becomes the foundation of the sales program, unlike presently when market forecasts are just a sort of check on the general concepts that the corporation's pursuing. But in the case of hydrogen, the air, water, and energy product suppliers need a novel approach to keep pace with all the many market, regulatory, and technical developments relative to hydrogen. The novel approach is a series of IIoW, this is Industrial Internet of Wisdom, causation loops, which connect all the wisdom for efficient and swift decision making. McIlvaine is providing the gross market forecast for the AWE products, but also forecasting the next niche markets. The global market forecast is based on this net zero in 2050. One of these niches is the use of hydrogen fuel in gas turbines. This niche is used as an example in the following part of the presentation, but we are covering, of course, all the hydrogen applications generally. McIlvaine is providing supplemental information and working with the media in a supportive role to validate the lowest total cost of ownership product options. However, we do have the McIlvaine Utility Tracking System, Utility eAlert, which follows this market and provides hydrogen articles on a weekly basis. And we'll show you some of the headlines for the last 6 months toward the end of this discussion. Relative to the markets, we're going to look at the overview, and really the market does segment into industrial, electric power generation, transport and storage, and then mobile. We're going to do a deep dive on the hydrogen use in combustion turbines. There's a significant market for flow and treat products in the production of hydrogen. A number of technologies and applications are evolving. There's considerable funding from governments who believe that hydrogen is an important option to achieve zero net carbon emissions by 2050. There is an opportunity for flow and treat and product suppliers to develop unique products which can boost EBITDA as well as revenues. In a fast developing market like this, there's lots of opportunities for distinguishing yourself and having a higher EBITDA product. Despite the uncertainty about applications and technologies, there is a continual need to predict the opportunity in each niche. One challenge is the fragmentation of the market into many subsegments. Each has a different total cost of ownership factor and therefore unique product requirements. McIlvaine is continually compiling information on these unique requirements and the products which are best suited to meet the needs. This data is being used to provide extensive forecasts of what the purchaser is buying in each application in each industry and then aggregating it by geography. There are a number of routes to net zero to combat climate change, which do not involve a big investment in air, water, energy products. Wind and solar use very few valves, pumps, filters, compressors, or heat exchangers. One exception is concentrated solar. Blue hydrogen with ammonia reduction, carbon sequestration, ammonia transport, and then combustion in gas turbines requires even more air, water, energy products than a coal-fired boiler. The use of industrial waste to create hydrogen and subsequent use in combined heat power plants entails substantial AWE product investment. The market for AWE products, as determined by the use of hydrogen, has two components. One component is the product sold because of their superior performance related to hydrogen. The other component is the AWE products, which are sold because the vendor also is supplying the hydrogen-ready products. Let's take a power plant as an example, power plant valves as an example. The annual revenue for hydrogen-ready valves will be no more than 300 million. Because the hydrogen firing will result in large use of turbines for combustion, the total valve market for these applications will be in excess of 3 billion. Annual purchases are going to be in the neighborhood of $220 billion when you include the total AWE products that are caused by these hydrogen-ready approaches. But of that 220 billion, only about 62 billion will actually be products that are designed specifically for the hydrogen. And that is shown graphically here, where the power is the bigger market, even than industrial, and then even bigger than mobile as well. So there are a number of management consulting companies that are doing a good job of continuing to assess the market in terms of the goals, environmental goals that are being set and the political situation. So we are covering those sorts of things here and what their predictions in terms of the number of tons of hydrogen that will be used, and this varies from 300 to 500 million tons in 2050. And this is a Bain analysis that segments these forecasts by the end use applications. And another way to look at it, which LEK is doing here, is what is the market in terms of the types of fuel that will be used, and ammonia would be a higher investment in many respects than either liquid hydrogen or gaseous hydrogen. And the difference being the ammonia, you've got a much more complex production process, but the piping and use would be much simpler than if you're using, for instance, gaseous hydrogen, which has very low fuel value. And so we're in this analysis, we go into a lot of these sorts of details here, and I'm just going to skip through some of that. Another way to look at it is what the sources of the energy that goes into making hydrogen. Well, that's going to be wind and solar and electrolyzers. But in the case of biomass and municipal sewage sludge and waste, food waste, and so forth, you're going to have relatively on-site type activities where a food company can use its waste produce hydrogen on site and then use that hydrogen at that point. The basically how much of this is going to be produced and consumed is another way. How much is going to be consumed by each one of these industries? People like this cement producers are already starting to switch over instead of using coal or some other fossil fuel. To the extent they can use hydrogen, greatly reduces their footprint, carbon footprint. The steel industry is moving ahead on that basis as well. So the transport and storage is another aspect of it, and there's lots of air, water, and energy products that are needed to store large quantities of ammonia or liquefied hydrogen, and that is a market that we are identifying as well. The power plants are the biggest market, and so we've looked at the fuel preparation for the power plants as well as the fuel burning in the power plants, and both of those are substantial markets. The IEA believes there's going to be a 1,867 gigawatts of hydrogen power plants, which is huge. That's more as almost as much capacity as there is coal-fired power plants in the world right now. And so we looked at what some of that is going to be in terms of the air, water, energy products, and the total is around $120 billion. Then mobile is another one that we analyzed. And we're going to do a little bit deeper dive in hydrogen use in combustion turbines. And our whole program here is providing these forecasts as part of a whole set of causation loops. So hundreds of hydrogen loops are being pursued. The specific analysis below focuses only on hydrogen combustion in turbines. There are 5 interlocking causation loops relative to hydrogen combustion in turbines. And one is the IIW, or Internet of Wisdom, so communication between management consultants, market forecasters, suppliers, media, event organizers, purchasing plants, and corporate oversight. And all of these are needed in the loop in order to validate the lowest total cost of ownership for new and better products. So some of the event organizers would be magazines on the industry, such as power, or on a particular product, such as pumps. And the Macklin Company has already written articles and is writing a number of other articles and working with these media to help develop these total cost of ownership vectors in all these little niches. And then there's a focused IIOW causation loop, again, where we look at each niche and what the total cost of ownership is for that niche, for the AWE products in that niche, in that process, and for each plant, and each plant is part of a corporation. And then we do industry-wide forecasts, and then worldwide forecasts as well. And then there's a pricing IIOW causation loop, which ends up with higher margins for the suppliers and lower total costs for the owner, because if you can determine the TCO factors, the suppliers can then work to reduce their costs compared to their competitors, and then supply products that have a lower total cost of ownership, even with an increased EBITDA, which ends up with higher selling prices for the suppliers and more profits. So, but the superior product has to be validated, and that's where the media comes into the picture. And then, of course, there are geographic IIoW causation loops. And this is particularly important in terms of, obviously, for sales representatives that need to determine what the market is in their state, but even from a cost of ownership factor, that there are general cost of ownership factors like electricity that are going to vary from country to country and with even within state and process and province. So having a standardized electrical cost database for all these calculations is highly desirable in terms of helping the end user make a fair decision. So the support for all this is, again, the media that are publishing all these articles. But the McElvain Company also is supplementing this with some of our publications, and one of which is our utility tracking system. So this is a weekly alert that, as well as identification of all the power plants in the world, that we've been doing for decades. And in this particular display, we show the user how he could quickly pick out the hydrogen information from the past issues. And for instance, you can go in on various different keyword searches, but you use a 4-word combination here, and you come up with 47 results. But if you just want to find out what Howden is doing with Haru, you put Howden and Haru in the search and you come up with just 2 results. So here are the headlines in the alert for the last 6 months, and a fair number of them have to do just with the hydrogen. As you can see, these are all in red here. And this is a way then to keep up on a continuing basis with new developments, which is part of this whole network and causation loop. So all this comes together with all these different entities to provide the wisdom that is necessary to reduce the cost of ownership for hydrogen use and meet the net zero in 2050. McElvain Company does market forecasts for on a customized basis for suppliers. We have useful tools such as this weekly alert and identification of all the power plants in the world and other services. You can find them on our website. I'd be glad to answer any of your questions. I'm Bob McElvain. You can reach me at 847-226-2391. I thank you for spending your time this afternoon.